All right, so today we're going to cover how to build successful membership sites with Memberium. And some of the main ideas is that I'm going to take you through how to set up a simple Infusionsoft campaign tied to WordPress, and that's kind of the bulk of it, or at least half of it. And then I'll share a couple little important membership lessons, especially related to running a WordPress site and some of the reasons for that. Then we'll go through some advanced features, and that's where I'm going to ask Dave, since he's the one actually making these things. I'm going to ask him a bunch of questions about which features we have coming out each month, and right now being the first time around, there's a bunch of them, but he'll go into a little bit more detail, especially for anyone who's kind of a developer level. Dave will be the guy to answer some of those questions for you. So let's just kind of jump right into it. So first of all, how to build a basic membership site that's expandable. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just go into Infusionsoft, and I'll show you, this is a basic membership site, really basic. And let me make sure I got my audience view open. Okay, so you guys are seeing this. And in here, all I'm really doing is it's any goal, and I'll kind of illustrate how to grow this. The goal is not really as important as the sequence. I mean, really all the goal needs to do for Memberium is make sure that it's collecting an email somehow. So an order form's going to do that. A web form's going to do that. If there are some internal goals, like if people are taking phone calls, then obviously they would need to get an email in order to do this. That's probably a pretty far-fetched case. But in the sequence itself, there's a few real simple steps. So if you think about the overall process, we need to set them a password. That's what this piece does. Give them a tag, saying what membership level they should have access to, and then send them an email with their membership details. And it's obviously important that this goes in order, because you got to generate the password before it's inserted into the email. If you do it the other way around, the email is going to end up there without a password in it. There are some additional things obviously you can do when delivering a membership. If you had fulfillment lists, all the other stuff you want to do is fine, but this is the minimum you really need to get into WordPress. So again, set a password, apply a tag, send an email, pretty simple. And the reason though that this is kind of important and that you want to start here, test this guy, is because then when you go to a more advanced setup, and I just kind of mapped out what a lot of people like to do, is they've got kind of an escalating series of products or goodies or whatever, right? So they're going to have something where you can maybe register for something free, whether it's a report or a video or something else. It's awesome if you can deliver that in a free membership site, obviously, because then you can, as they're consuming the content, serve ads and different things to them, maybe in the sidebar, maybe in the content. But more importantly, since they're in a membership site, you're serving those, but you can obviously personalize them. And from free to paid, you might only have their first name and their email, so you might put that in. You might pre-fill the order form when they get there. Not too many fancy things, but once they've bought the first product, once they've upgraded from a free member to a higher level membership, then obviously you can do one-click upsells, and a bunch of other stuff starts coming into play, which can be a little bit more fun. And so I mapped this out. Again, it's real simple, but I mapped it out just to show you what really belongs between each of these steps is a basic membership delivery sequence. And so I built it in the other campaign, but obviously you can pull the same stuff in, password, tag, email. And in the email, I don't think I've set this one up, so I'll just show you guys that real quick. It's like you would do for, say, a customer hub email, where you're just really going to merge in their email address and the link to log in and their password. So obviously you just go in the body and you say your link, your password, and just above that probably your username, and you merge those things in. So I'm talking real simple at this point. You can jazz that up a lot. I mean, there's auto login links and stuff like that available with Memberium, and maybe Dave, I'll have you show one of those. I'm not sure if you were planning on it or not, but this is the basic, right? And so this sequence, what I'm pointing out to you in terms of the overall campaign, is this sequence really does need to go in between each of these, because not every user in every case is going to start at the freebie, go to this, go to that. And so what I'm saying there is I'd probably take one of these and I'd pull on a few more where I clone the same steps in. So I'm not saying you have to set up all those steps each time. Obviously, for those of you who've used Infusion, you can go to sequence, copy it from campaign, and bring in that same sequence again. So you make the basic, and then you just pull it in all over the place. And the reason it's important to have it between each and every one of these, as well as some of the other stuff that you're going to do there, is that when you connect this, knowing how the campaign builder typically works, people have right here, for example, the rule is people can only enter in from the far side. And so obviously you click down here on these little goal settings, and you'd say any contact, and you'd hit save. And so this is saying now people, they can enter from anywhere. But obviously, at this point, if they do enter from anywhere, you still need to generate them a password brand new because they didn't get it back at this step. So that's the point, is at every step, you want to have those basic membership functions. And in one of these functions, the one that's setting the password, you can control whether or not it overwrites the password. So it's not saying give them a new one every time. It's saying, well, at least attempt to give them one in case they didn't already have one each time. So that's how a really simple membership of like, oh, you got one free thing, can easily become a bunch of things. You just make sure contacts can enter on any one of these points. And, that's kind of the gist of it. Now, I'll make it just a little, I'll expand a little bit on this. But I want to keep it mostly simple because it is pretty simple. The only expansion I'll make is that if this sequence here, when they buy, if this were more or less about delivering this product, you might want to have a separate sequence for the sales portion. So you might want to say, well, delivery is separate from sales. And the purpose of that is that then you can stop one and not the other. You can say, well, I'm sorry, it's getting a little crowded in here. Let me pull that off. Still a little too crowded, but the point is then you can say, well, here's the delivery, and that needs to go on even if they buy, because I still, there might be week 1, week 2, week 3 of this first product that they still need to get. It's still, required. And this would be sales to next product. So the idea being, well, sales to next product is going to stop, delivery is going to keep going. And some of this is basic Infusionsoft campaign builder stuff, but I just wanted to make sure you see how the membership aspect of it fits in. So it's like they buy something, I'm going to deliver. Even if they buy right away, I might still need to deliver. In some cases, maybe not. If this is kind of a, where they upgrade and this first product is actually included in the upgrade, so it's already delivered as part of it, you might actually want to go ahead and cancel that thing. And there's various ways to do this. You know what I mean? I could have chosen to not connect those two and just simply connect up and around. But in membership terms, it's all about, okay, do they have a password? Have you given them their password via email, typically? And do they have the right tags? So at each of these other stages, even though I'm saying, oh, just clone the sequence, obviously in this one, I apply a tag for the freebie. And this one, I apply a tag for the product. And those tags, here's how this ties back over into WordPress. Those tags become membership levels. So when I go into WordPress, it's not a fresh Memberium install, but nothing's been set up in Memberium except that I put in my API key. So all I did is I set up the API key. You don't have to change many of the other options. You'll see there's some advanced stuff, and again, Dave will go into it, but in its simplest sense, and this is what I like to do for people, especially the first time around, is I just say, well, here's your simple membership campaign. Here's how you can clone it for more than one. Here's how you can connect it in case they're escalating. And then in here, when you go to memberships, you're just pulling in anything that has 2 matching tags. So for this to exist, 947, it means I have a tag in Infusion called 947 and another tag in Infusion called 947payf. And I'll just kind of show you that real briefly. So, because I've got a lot of them, and you'll kind of see what I'm saying. So just real briefly in Infusion, you can see here's a tag, same name, payf. Now, payf stands for payment failure, and we did that to be, kind of backwards compatible for people who are switching over to this. I think it actually might come from some other membership plugins even before iMember started doing it, but that's why we did it, is because these iMember customers were saying, well, do I have to change my whole structure? Do I have to change this or that? It's like, well, no, we can just match that. So when you build your tags, if you build just 1 or 2, then in your membership campaign, you're obviously only applying the regular tag, and not the payf tag. The payf tag is applied when someone's credit card doesn't go through, let's say if it's a monthly billing or something like that. But all these other ones, anything that matches this criteria will show up. When you go to membership levels, it'll show up here. So this is pulling through the API those tags that match that criteria. And therefore it ignores a bunch of other categories. And there's a ton of options to that extent. But in its simplest form, let's say I did come in and I wanted to make a membership level, and it's the basic membership level. Well, I just really give it a name. You can also set, default login, logout pages and all that kind of stuff for specific membership levels. There's more to it. But for the real basic functionality, the point is, okay, a tag becomes a membership level. Now, a membership level inside of WordPress is used on the pages and the posts as well. And you can use that kind of throughout, but just to give you a real quick example, here's your page, and then that membership level I just created, the basic membership level, is available here. That if I check it, now this page is protected. Now, within it being protected, there's a few little details. Basically, when it's protected, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to redirect people away who don't have access, or we're going to hide it as if the page didn't exist, basically give them a 404, or we're going to show an excerpt only. And the excerpt, this little guy down here, if you were not to see it in your site, at the top of WordPress, there's always screen options. You can check a box if it's not showing up for you. But the excerpt is basically saying non-member content. You could call it teaser. Excerpt and teaser are about the same thing. And then you'd put the member content up here. So if you had a 30-minute video, you could put it here, and then you could put a 30-second version of it with maybe even a 30-second transcription in the excerpt. And that's really valuable because if you think about it, then the search engines are getting to that excerpt for one, and also other people can see it. But it's, that's a really big difference between using Customer Hub and WordPress. Obviously, people understand it's the domain, it's the branding, but it's also the SEO. It's that your content, your membership content, even if you think of it as locked up, some version of it should be a teaser for, not just Google, but the social media outlets and whatnot. Let people share those things. And that gets a little deeper as well, as far as you can even protect it fully, and then you can check these boxes for Google First Click Free and Facebook Crawler Access, meaning it is even protected. There's not a version typically open to the public, but the Facebook crawler can get to it, and Google First Click means Google can index your page, and people can go to that page, and the membership site software will actually say, well, they just came in from Google, let's let them view this page. But if they go to another page on the site, it doesn't let them have that second click, and that's why it's called First Click Free. So their first click in is free, they could watch something, they go anywhere else, and they're going to get the traditional excerpt or redirect or whatever. And redirect, I should point out, you would redirect them typically to the sales page related to this product. So it's, once you understand a couple of the basic options, it's all pretty straightforward. Let me just pause right here where we've shown kind of membership levels, a little bit of the content protection. And let me just ask for questions. Do you guys have any questions about that kind of basic setup? Anything on the Infusion side or anything on the WordPress side? Okay, perfect. So question here from Graham. I don't protect pages, but protect portions of my pages using shortcodes in the template. Is that possible? Well, I'm glad you asked. Yeah, it's very possible. And I should point out that even though I'm showing all these real simple features, Memberium, if I go over to the site, I go to features, it does have a bunch of shortcodes. So yes, there's a shortcode for showing just part of the page. Sorry, I don't want to go to features, but documentation. And under documentation, if you go to shortcodes, the one I believe you're looking for is under content visibility, mem has any tags. So essentially it's saying you can dictate only a portion of the content. Here's protected content only visible to people with 102, else showed anyone without that tag. So that's the exact thing that you're asking there, Graham. And just to point out, in the video section, there's not too many videos, but under documentation there's videos. This one right here shows that in some more detail as far as how you can use that one based on tags and also nest it inside of another one based on whether they're logged in or not. And you can kind of nest these anyways, and so you can have layers of this. It's kind of fun, but hopefully that'll help you more for the deeper questions on that.
Micah, can I point out something else about controlling content within a page?
Sure.
So one of the other differences, and this is in the newer versions of Memberium, there is some support in the older version, but we're getting ready to roll out a new version here in the next week or two, which has it much more fleshed out, is that you can do those tags by the tag name as well as the number, as long as your tag names are unique. Now, one of the challenges that I've had, because I've built a lot of membership sites for a lot of people, is keeping all those numbers straight. When you've got a lot of tags and a lot of if-thens on the page, how do you just look at that and know if it's configured properly? And so what we did was implement support for tag names. So you can say if they have any tag and one of those tags is gold, it'll look up that tag and take care of the number lookup for you.
Yeah, here's an example of what he's talking about. And the obvious risk, Dave, I guess, is that if they then go and were to change their tag names, then this might not work. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. If you change your tag name, then you need to change the references as well. But that's an option that's there if you want to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and for most people, they'll probably love that versus the tag ID. So that makes sense. Cool, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Oh, here's one. So Rich is asking, how does Memberium integrate with WooCommerce? And Dave, I'll let you maybe answer it first because you might have a deeper answer, but I've got kind of a surface level thing. So go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, at the moment we don't have any particular integration for WooCommerce, but I'm definitely open to looking at that if there's something specific that you want to do. There's nothing that I know of that conflicts with WooCommerce, but definitely if that's something of interest, I definitely like to explore that more.
Okay, perfect. And so I actually know Rich, we can hook you guys up, but I think that, so my surface answer, and just to the rest of you guys, is just to understand that this is a membership plugin. WooCommerce, I'm assuming, is more of an e-commerce kind of a thing. Now, if you wanted to push someone, from your membership site over there to buy, we might be able to hook up some things like passing data, pre-filling WooCommerce, and so forth. And Dave will know more about that. But just typically, and generally, Memberium is, it's a membership plugin. And the cool thing about it, though, is that Dave's split it, at least for now, into two plugins. One serves up the database, and one serves up the actual, the membership site. So when, the idea with that is we have this extra plugin serving a whole database, and there's a lot of extendability off of that. And that one's actually not even encrypted. It's just the membership portion of it that's encrypted. So that's another thing to consider. And Dave, hopefully you'll, talk more to that. But there's, just because I know Rich is kind of developer level, there is data available that we're trying to make available for you guys to use in other ways, but we try to stay mostly kind of membership. Yeah, learning management system, exactly. So Chris is asking, what's the main difference between this and iMember 360? Honestly, the main difference right now, even though we have a few differing features, is just the team behind it. So we've got a bigger team, we're dedicated to supporting it. I'm going to make lots and lots and lots of videos of it. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of our licensing policy. We are going to be a lot more lenient, and if licenses do need to be shut off, we've spent a lot of time figuring out how to do it in a nice way, because we run membership sites. We understand, the detriment that is to someone's business to have their site shut off, and we're not just going to do that callously, which iMember 360, has a slightly different reputation for that. That's kind of the main difference in my eyes. I mean, a year from now, that's going to be a much different answer, just because we, in launching it, built in all the basic functionality that people already need. But going forward, we're looking at all sorts of stuff, and that's what Dave's going to get in the new features. A big technical difference is that, for one, we're kind of into integrating with add-ons. So, Chris, I know you even have something, an add-on, and I loved your quick sales system, by the way. So we'd love to integrate with add-ons. We're kind of taking a pro add-on approach that way. But at the very, very core of it, there's a big difference in how we build our database. So iMember 360 sucks all the data out of Infusion and takes kind of a, and I know this because I spent, way more than a year constantly down in Costa Rica with Bob, and it's probably changed a bit, but they build their database as in, I'm going to pull it all over, I'm going to hold it, cache it. They do a lot of that pretty well. We just give the user more finite control of that process. So there's only so much you can do, and obviously you really have to optimize with Infusionsoft's API. They're, I guess, getting better at how it's built, but some things take multiple calls. But when you go into Memberium, you're going to see a couple things that look techy, but it's for this exact reason. It's how do we build the database more efficiently. When I say build the database, what I mean is pull data from Infusionsoft. So here you can manually sync things, and we do this so that on every load, we're not just automatically syncing everything. In the sync options, it gets even a little tighter. You can choose to ignore certain tag categories. You can choose to ignore certain contact fields. So we're just limiting not just the number of calls, but the amount of data we're pulling from the API. And then I think there's a little bit more to this. Let me just kind of peek. What is it?
Yeah,
right
and you know
here.
what,
So
Mike, is we can address this more in the next section as well, because this is one of the items I wanted to talk about.
Oh, perfect. So we'll get back to that in just a little bit, but so I get carried away here. Yeah, I mean that's a huge like baseline difference. The way we build the database, the control we give the user, and we're trying to really blend simple. Like I started the webinar, here's how you can do it real simply, and it works right out of the box just like that. But now over on the far end of the spectrum is, well, if you have a gigantic site with tons of users and you really need to be able to balance data and all this, then you can. So a couple different things, I guess. Okay, so William asked, please tell me why Memberium is a better choice than Customer Hub. I swear, guys, these questions are not planted. These are just the questions. I love it. So why is Memberium better than Customer Hub? I would say that they're different. What I mean by that is Memberium is going to be better as a core content delivery system for you because, one, it's on your own domain. You have full control. You're in WordPress. You can make your own themes. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff. Customer Hub really focuses on the basics. Okay, people want video membership sites. They want partial pages. They want membership groups. So Customer Hub's trying to deliver to the masses a easy-to-use system, which is a great objective. And I do use Customer Hub myself, and I love Customer Hub. More importantly to me, though, the biggest difference, Customer Hub is really focused and was built originally to be for customers to come in and view their invoices and update their credit cards and all that kind of stuff. So the way I see it and the way I currently use it is I actually do have Customer Hub, and it's a collection system. And I have my WordPress stuff, and that's my membership site and the bulk of my content because, you know, if I have 400 videos in Customer Hub, it doesn't do me a lick of good with Google. If I have 400 pages in my WordPress membership site, I can have 400 indexed teasers that are pulling traffic into my site. And that, you know, it's a huge difference. Your membership content belongs in WordPress. Your customers, when they have real account issues and they got to go in and update their cards on specific subscriptions, view and print invoices and so forth, Customer Hub is still great at that. So that's how I use it. You could also, you know, split away. I believe we have some shortcodes that are a little bit you know, credit card or e-commerce related, and that stuff's honestly not that hard to build. It's just that Customer Hub does it really, really well. So, Dave, do you want to add anything to that?
Not particularly. Yeah, Customer Hub's really it's an entry-level solution, and that's great. But you know, like Micah said, and the biggest thing in my mind, and the reason why I don't generally recommend it's a Prime site, is that it's not your brand, it's not your domain. And at the end of the day, you don't have full control over what happens there. So, so it's good for certain niche applications or to get off the ground, but I would recommend something that you're hosting yourself otherwise.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I doubt it will happen to many people, you know, overall, and hopefully no one on this webinar. But I have a friend who he had his Infusion app shut down. You know, I had some you know, disagreements with Infusionsoft and whatnot. He got his app shut down, but his Customer Hub app disappeared too because you know, from the time he started it to the time it happened, they had acquired Customer Hub. So yeah, owning your own content is a big deal. I mean, even if you think about having a membership site in WordPress, worst case scenario, you can't use Infusionsoft anymore. Well, you have all your content in WordPress. Hook it up to, you know, something else, Wishlist Member and PayPal. It's a lesser solution, but it's portable. First, you know, you can just install a different plugin if you had to versus, oh, well, I'm starting completely over. Graham has a funny question. He asks, can you tell us what the Rocky bookmark on your browser leads to? Right here, Rocky. That does look exciting, doesn't it? This is actually, it leads to the Rockefeller Habits website. Love, 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 love the Rockefeller Habits. But not for this webinar. I'll get to you guys soon about that, though. Let's see, can we ban users with tags or track logins, logouts with action sets? Oh, funny. This is what you were saying. Yeah, he asked the question before I got to this page. So obviously, you know, yeah, there's a bunch more advanced features here. Just staying on point here, though. I mean, are there any other questions you guys have about the basic setup, some of the plugin stuff before we go on to some of the advanced features in that? Okay, looks pretty quiet. Might be popping in. Yeah, there will be a recording. So yes, definitely your partner can check it out. And one of the reasons we're doing these recordings, by the way, and just so you can understand another difference with what we're trying to do here, this recording in a minute, I'm going to be asking Dave specifically feature by feature about a bunch of different things the software does. But we're going to take this webinar and we're going to cut that 5-minute segment out. And you see all these little question marks from everything? Those are all going to lead to little video pages. So you know, that's what we're trying to have it be really, really well documented and easy to use as well. Rich asks, will we be at InfusionCon? Yeah, we both will. So hopefully we'll see you there. Yes, indeed. Okay, cool. So let me go back into here. Got to become a more polished presenter, right? So before we go on to those things, let's talk about some of the really little kind of important membership lessons. And I say they're little, they just have kind of a big impact. So a little one is separate your sites, your WordPress installs. And this is where, you know, the question came up earlier, how does this integrate with WooCommerce? I could be wrong, but for me, I'd probably install WooCommerce on a separate, separate instance of WordPress in like a folder. Yoursite.com/shop, yoursite.com/members. Those would be two separate WordPress installs. And the reason for that is you wouldn't probably want Memberium on your e-commerce same install just because it's going to slow down your pages a little bit. And we obviously optimize all we can, like you saw there, but still, you don't want your conversion pages slowed down. You want those as quick as possible. So separating your sites is going to make it so that you don't have too many plugins on one site bogging it down, or you don't have membership plugins needlessly bogging down your e-commerce site and all that kind of thing. But it also reduces conflicts and potential conflicts. If you have a bunch of plugins on one site, they may not have a conflict now, but you update one and suddenly you're needing to wait for an update to the other and all that kind of stuff. So separating them goes a long way there. Obviously, setting up test sites and testing things beforehand is a must, but even then, I'm saying for the actual day-to-day performance, making separate WordPress installs is big for you. Another thing, and this is more, I guess, kind of marketing, you could say, focus on the customer. So if you look at marketing as going through the purchase process all the way through the delivery process, which in membership sites, especially escalating ones, it really is. You're still selling and marketing to the person ongoing. Focus on the customer and their point of view. I recently put this out in a blog post, but I'll just give you the short version of it. If you think of a bug in a rug, you, the site administrator, you're looking down on the rug from above and you can see all this stuff and you care about all the little nooks and crannies. The bug only cares about the grain, the strand of carpet right in front of its face. And that's your customer. They really care about the page they're on, the video they're looking at. They might glance over your whole site. You can make a site overview and all those things. Those are fine. Structure is really good. But the actual kind of user experience, a lot of membership site owners, they get too bogged down in, well, this is, I've been working on this content for 7 years and it's in its 6th edition and all these other things. It's like, well, how does your user like it? And if they had the option of going to something else, what would they go to? And the last one is creating bright lines. And this is kind of an analogy, I think, from the legal world where they say, a good contract has bright lines. It has really kind of unambiguous points. Very few of them, but really solid lines, main lines. Instead of everything being really detailed, it's like, let's have a couple really main kind of points and areas so the customer can navigate around. So for me, what this looks like is I've got a starter training, I've got a membership to webinars that are monthly for Infusionsoft, and then there's an insiders training, and the insiders is broken out into 12 modules and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm always kind of surprised at the feedback I get from people about how much they do appreciate that structure. But then within those modules, I mean, honestly, I could probably structure it a little bit better. But if you start at the top and you say, okay, what am I talking about? What are the 3 general areas of this? Okay, of each of those 3 general areas, what are the 3 sub areas of that? And create those kind of, bright, simple structures. Then that can go a long way for you, for your employees in the future. Where do I put this? For all the customer questions going forward. That's a big thing that I see a lot of people mess up on. They see the content from their own point of view, and they're such a pro at it that they just don't understand the customer's point of view in their 30-minute time frame that they're coming into your site to mess with your stuff. They just don't care. They really need to get to it quick, and it needs to work for them now. So just a couple little tidbits. And now let's get on to some of the new features. And again, with this first one, maybe they're all new. We won't talk about every feature, though, just the ones that are kind of unique and different. So Dave, first off, campaign builder goals. Can you tell us why this is important to you? You've got them integrated into Memberium. You're talking about looking forward. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, historically, and I've been in Infusionsoft since about 2008, 2009. And our tools of the day back then were tags and action sets and follow-up sequences. And as Infusionsoft is growing and evolving, they're starting to move away from that. And they talked about that last year at InfusionCon 2013, which is that they see a day when action sets are going to completely go away. And while we don't want to abandon, we're not going to abandon support for tags and action sets, the writing is definitely on the wall. So part of what we've done, building this and having the benefit of a clean slate is that just about any sort of thing that you could traditionally do with a tag or do with an action set, you can do with a campaign goal. And there's two ways really to start a campaign goal in Campaign Builder. One is through applying a tag, and the other one is by actually just achieving the goal itself. And tags are a nice bridge that allow you to tie tags to campaigns, but they're not 100% reliable. There have been times reported where a tag was applied and the appropriate campaign goal was not achieved. So just to be safe and not do it kind of halfway, we've implemented full campaign goal support across the board. And anywhere where it might not be today, it will be soon.
So, Dave, that's perfectly accurate, but allow me to make it really clear for people who don't understand what he's talking about, because he's talking about through the API. So he's saying traditionally the membership software would use Infusion's API to apply a tag to start a campaign, but now the membership software goes through the API directly and just achieves the goal. There's an API method in Infusionsoft Goals now where you can just achieve it directly through the API, and you're saying that's a bit more stable, probably also faster. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, it's more stable and it's faster. If you still have, if you're still bridging that world between your older systems using tags and action sets and using tags mixed in with goals with Campaign Builder, that'll absolutely work. But just in a forward-looking mode, we're providing direct access to achieve a goal directly, and you can achieve any goal in any campaign through just by applying a shortcode.
Very cool. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Now, this one, honestly, I probably, like most people, I don't even know what this is. So, Dave, first of all, what? What does this do?
Yeah, so traditionally, the web server of choice out there on the internet has been Apache. And Apache's great, and it's still a good web server. This is not none of this is intended as a slight against Apache. There are, however, other newer web servers with different architectures and different models that are designed for higher performance, where performance is the absolute top goal. Apache was designed to be flexible, and it's pretty much unbeatable in that respect. So a couple of the web servers that I've looked at and used with some of my clients are Nginx and another one which is not listed here called LIGHT-TPD or LightEPD. These are the sorts of web servers that, for example, like YouTube employs to handle the kind of traffic and scalability and performance that they need for what they do. I do all of the initial development for Memberium under Nginx. I'm using that with clients. All the code that I do still works with Apache. I still test with Apache. But I do my primary development under Nginx to ensure that it works there first. And just an example of scalability, I have a client with a WordPress site who's doing over 1 million hits a day at about 40% CPU load on a single box, with WordPress. So it's definitely got the goods. We also do development with MariaDB instead of MySQL. Because that is a faster, newer version of the MySQL fork, which is the database that WordPress runs on. And we do that just to make sure that it's compatible with that as well.
Nice. I'm sure to some people out there that meant a lot, and to others,
absolutely
maybe not so much.
Yeah.
No, but go ahead.
So part of the backstory here is what caused this to be built, and it wasn't built just to be another Me Too. Certainly there's a baseline of features that all of you guys and my clients, because this was built for my clients originally as an internal private project. My clients tend to be larger, they tend to have a lot of traffic, and they need to scale. And so that was the challenge that I set out to address, which is why things like, which some of what we're going to talk about in later slides, why caching and why the emphasis on performance is so critical. The sites that this is running have 16,000 members or more. They're not small sites, so I have to be servant to some other considerations above and beyond. Does it run in WordPress?
Well, and that's for the good of everyone, because
Yeah,
even if you,
and it does.
yeah,
It benefits everybody, but a lot of people may not need that now, but I hope you all need it someday. I hope you guys are all booming and growing out of your servers and need to scale.
exactly. A couple questions kind of related to this subject. Chris is asking, can he run this on Rackspace cloud sites?
There's not any reason I know that we couldn't. We definitely try it. It has been run on Rackspace cloud sites. I'm not sure if there's a particular requirement that you need, Chris, but I know, Chris, that you have my email. If you want to get with me after the webinar about the particulars, I'd be happy to look at it. I do have one large client, and they've got several of these running on Rackspace Cloud, so I don't imagine it would be a problem.
Very cool. Okay, just looking if there's any other questions on this. Doesn't look like it, and I'm surprised there's maybe more developers than I thought, because people kind of were jiving on this Nginx thing, so that's perfect. Let's talk about the Facebook integration. So first of all, what are some of the the benefits in layman's terms? What do you even mean Facebook integration?
Sure. So somebody asked, the question is, how is this different than iMember 360 or than Customer Hub? And part of this is really about our philosophies. And Micah touched on some of the business philosophy, but my philosophy is really much more about being customer driven. One of my large customers wanted their users to be able to log in via Facebook. And other platforms said, no, won't happen, never happened. And so what I did is I set out to integrate it. So we do have some limited support for logging in via Facebook. There's some caveats to that, which are part and parcel of being with Facebook. Facebook has an email address on record, which is what we use. So essentially, we trust Facebook to verify that you're the owner of that address and then pass that to us. And then we'll let you log in with that email address. So this may sound exciting. It may not be for everybody. Those that want it, it's a great thing. So that's kind of a philosophical difference. So we have the Facebook integration. The other part of Facebook integration is that we have full support for Facebook plugins, even on membership protected pages. And that is also pretty unique. And the fourth bullet point on here is that we support Facebook First Click as well as Google First Click. So if you had a site where you wanted people to be able to share pages, maybe they're membership protected pages and they can only view that first initial page, we provide support for that. And that's something you can turn off or on a page by page basis. So, if you don't want it, or if you only want it certain low risk places, you can turn it on and manage it that closely.
So Dave, are you saying that the Facebook web crawler button in there is Facebook First Click, similar?
The Google First Click, which actually I should change the name on, because originally it was started off as Google First Click, but it's also a Facebook First Click.
I gotcha. So there's a couple little questions here. One, will we be doing the same with Google Plus and Twitter? And I'm assuming that question came in kind of when you're talking about being able to use the widgets or whatever on those pages. I'm not sure if they have all the same widgets, but what are your thoughts on that?
The thoughts are I have to investigate each one and see what they provide and if we can integrate it. Facebook provided all the necessary pieces, so it was possible to do. The other part, and again, Micah touched on this earlier, is that we're very much not about rebuilding the wheel. We're very much about finding best of breed integrations, and then, like for example, the Nextend Facebook login, which is who we integrate with. I don't implement Facebook login myself. I tie into a plugin and hook into it, and then that plugin provides a best of breed solution. So. So we'd have to look at each one. I mean, definitely there's things I'm interested in integrating as well. LinkedIn is another one, especially because a lot of us in this space are catering to solopreneurs or people who have LinkedIn accounts. That's another attractive way to let people log in, as well as Google Plus or Twitter.
Okay, and I think that's his follow-up was that it was specifically about the logins, and so that's perfect.
Yeah.
So there's another question. Alexander, he just asked about how it compared, and you might have come in just a little bit late, Alexander, but there will be a recording, and we covered that in quite a bit of detail just a little bit earlier. So sorry, we'll move on from that, or maybe if we have time at the end, Dave can recap it, because I'd also like to get his feedback. But let me just check these other questions, see. So here's an interesting one. My content is online lead gen for offline businesses. Can I use Memberium to set up the back end to deliver individual leads to individual members via zip code match? So I think,
So,
go ahead,
so
Dave.
the short answer is yes. The longer answer is Memberium doesn't provide that part of it, but certainly we provide access to all kinds of data that would allow you to build a plugin or customize a plugin to let you do that.
Yeah, there you go. And again, Dave might talk more about it, but there's actually two plugins, at least currently. One pulls the data, one does the membership stuff, and the one that pulls the data, that's kind of its purpose, is for you to be able to use that for whatever you need. Rich is asking, does it have inline PHP support?
No, it doesn't. There's plenty of other plugins that do that, so we didn't see a need to reinvent that.
Yeah, and that actually touches again on another philosophy, is that there's a lot of things that aren't membership related that we just aren't going to put in. Yeah, Rich says PHP execution is the exact plugin that I'd use for that. And there's just no reason for us to bog down our membership content with a bunch of plugins that you could go grab for yourself. Reason being is then we're not bogging down your site with plugins that other people ask for, like weird little features that don't really belong in a membership plugin. And it's not laziness. It's actually trying to stay lightweight, trying to let other plugins do what they do best, and that kind of thing. Let's go on. I'm not seeing anything else. E-Rock's asking, do we have demos or examples of these integrations? We've got a couple demo sites we're building, but they're not quite ready for us to show, and so not yet, unfortunately. Yeah, there's a little frowny face from Andrew. That's how I feel. No, I'm just kidding. So action links, Dave. Tell me. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we view Optimized Press 2.0 as being a first-class solution. They're not partners. I don't want to say that they're partners, but we view that plugin as a first-class partner in building membership sites, and specifically the Optimized Press 2.0 theme. Again, being customer-driven, one of our larger clients builds all of their sites, and they've got about 50 sites, 50 membership sites. They build all of their membership sites using Optimized Press 2.0. So one of the clients came to us and said, hey, we want to be able to use Optimized Press 2.0 buttons, but we want to be able to fire off action sets, add tags, do goals, etc., based on if somebody clicks an Optimized Press 2 button. So we implemented a shortcode that lets you do that. You could add, remove tags, achieve goals, run action sets, all that sort of thing from a single shortcode. And our shortcodes do work in Optimized Press 2.0 buttons. We also test heavily to make sure that the pages work. One of our other core principles in building this plugin is that we have to design and code everything to be as compatible and follow WordPress best practices as closely as possible. And because of that, when we do run with Optimized Press, there are no compatibility settings that have to be set, no special detection. We do everything the way it's supposed to be done, knock on wood, and so things tend to work fairly well together. Another example is that during a WordPress upgrade, we don't typically need to upgrade the plugin because we follow the standards.
Yeah, that's for those of you who are just getting started, you may not fully understand the implication there, but that's so big. To not have to deal with issues every time WordPress upgrades, or you upgrade something else, especially now where WordPress is starting to auto upgrade, it's even bigger. And that's a pretty big differentiator between us and iMember, is that we're trying to stick to that as closely as possible. I mean, like I said, one of our goals, you could say, is uptime for your site, because no matter how flashy it is, if it goes off for a little while, you get cancellations. That's no good.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's it's a fundamental difference, and it's not a sexy, exciting difference I can point to and everybody gets excited about. But following WordPress best practices and following their architecture and using their facilities rather than reinventing them is a core part of how this plugin is coded. So
Oh, no, if you're a longtime WordPress geek, you get excited about that. I'm pretty excited.
I'm
Like that
excited. So let's work for me. I can focus on features instead of bug fixes, hopefully.
exactly, right?
So yeah,
Okay.
so another feature requested by a client was Gravity Forms autofill integration. And so what we do is we provide for the logged in, if you have a logged in user, we provide autofill for all the basic fields. And by basic fields, I mean first name, last name, email, phone number, specifically phone one, since we're all Infusionsoft geeks here. Uh, the full address set for address one, which is your billing address. So street one, street two, city, state, postal code, and country. And those all autofill. There's no integration required. The plugin just detects if Gravity Forms is installed and then makes the services available to autofill that information on demand.
And for those of you who don't know Gravity Forms, it's basically cool looking, kind of fancy form plugin that a lot of people
It's
like to
yeah,
use.
it's an amazingly extendable platform for building forms, and it's got plugin. It has its own plugins that tie into it and add services on top. And one of those, at least one of those, is for Infusionsoft to allow your forms to interact with Infusionsoft. So
Nice. And I'll just pause real quick. Does anyone have any questions on the Gravity Forms or the action links before we push ahead? And I'll just give just 1 second for people to type that stuff in. And if it comes in late, we'll pick it up in just a minute here at the end. But let's talk about this one, the Yoast Google Analytics integration. And this one, it was kind of funny to me because even though I've been doing membership sites forever, when you told me what this was for, it kind of,
yeah,
I was pretty excited. It was like, really? I'd never
yeah.
even thought
So
to do that.
and again, I work with a lot of big clients. I work with a lot of big marketers, and the adage there is that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so accurate measurement is really important. Part of that, and it's easy. I mean, there's a dozen plugins out there that will drop. You just put in your Google Analytics code, and they drop the code in your footer and your header, and that's about it. And iMember is another one. It's got Google Analytics built in, and it drops the code in. And that's fairly easy to do. But I wanted for a lot of these features, I try and take a step back and say, what do we really need to get things done and do things the best way possible? And rather than reinvent, again, I look towards the best of breed plugins that are doing the job. And Yoast Google Analytics is an amazing plugin. Part of what it lets you do is it lets you add and track custom variables so that, for example, you can record different pages or different actions in different ways. It'll let you record if somebody clicks off of your page as well as within your site. So you can track your outbound links or links to PDFs and all kinds of events. So what we did is we integrated with Yoast so that we can push your Memberium client data for your current user into your Google Analytics tracking data so that you can segment your traffic. Now, Google Analytics has some restrictions on what kind of data you're allowed to pass. You're not allowed to track anything that's personally identifiable. So you can't pass somebody's email in, for example, or even an ID based on their email. What you can do, for example, is push in their membership level or their membership name, and then you could run your Google Analytics reports and say, okay, what are my gold users doing? What are my silver users doing? What are my bronze users doing? You can measure that engagement. You can measure time on site. You can measure your time on page. You can slice and dice and see what's going on rather than just saying, okay, here's all my clients. And there's more to come on this front. There's a great dashboarding package that I've had a chance to look at, and I'm looking at adding support for pushing the site data into that dashboarding package as well. So this is only the beginning of the iceberg as far as really understanding what your users are doing, not just getting them onto your site, but being able to manage their engagement.
Awesome. So I mean, in essence, like you're saying, it's really all about being able to run analytics on individual almost levels of membership, other custom
Yeah.
variables too, but in our sense, probably that most of the time, right?
Yeah, and I just picked the membership level because it's the simplest kind of explanation I can give. Where everybody will get it, and we don't have to go into trying to explain why this would be a benefit. Um, you know,
Yeah.
you can segment your, depending on what you want to do. There's all kinds of ways you can push that data into Google Analytics. And really, what I'm trying to do is provide a basic tool that then gives you the freedom to do what you want. You can push any of your custom fields in, and you can control what data is in that custom field. So the possibilities are kind of endless there.
Nice. A question kind of related to this. Graham's asking about Infusion Analytics, if it's integrated to that. And as far as I would understand, you just pop them in and it's the same, right?
Yeah, actually, as you mentioned earlier, Micah, there's actually two plugins that are part of this family. The first one is completely open source. It's called the i2 SDK. And the i2 SDK by itself, without the membership plugin, implements the Infusionsoft Analytics on your site. There's a switch to turn it on. So you're not forced to use it, but if you want to use it, you just install that plugin, put in your API key, put in your app name, hit the switch, and you can do that.
Nice. So it's included, you're saying?
Yeah, that's included. And you actually, like I said, that's part of i2 SDK, which is free and it's open source, and you're not required to install Memberium even to get that feature.
Perfect. So another question came in. Kalik asked if we'd be demonstrating some show and tell features. I could go in and, maybe I'll show you a couple little points here, but just in the interest of time, we were trying to push through this. All this, though, is going to get cut up and put into the site with documentation, and there will be screenshots and all that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, this is the very first webinar, and so we're not there yet, but I appreciate the question. He also asks, is there any type of tricky drip feed stuff that other plugins don't do? Not that I know of. Dave, did you build any of that in?
No, so we have some features that are unique and are still a little bit in the formation phase. We have a custom variable encounter feature where you can create your own custom fields within Memberium that are not part of Infusionsoft that can be managed there. That's still in development. Part of that will extend into access control. You can restrict content based not only on membership levels and contact IDs and whether or not they're logged in, and if they're coming from Google. You can also restrict access just based on individual tags. So, for example, if you wanted to, you could very easily, and again, embracing Campaign Builder, you can use Campaign Builder to drop tags on a schedule, and those tags could unlock individual pages or portions of pages by saying, okay, this page requires this membership level and this tag, and then that would unlock that.
Well, and that, because I've done some of the custom dripping stuff, and the only difficulty there, Kalik, is just that when you do it in code, not in code, even with some of the little variables you can use with some plugins, you'd lose control of it. Just meaning once it's kind of on a counter, it might be based off the date the contact was created, and it's going to drip something every day or whatever. There's some things like that I've seen, but you lose control of that process, or you have to go back and reset their contact creation date and do a bunch of weird stuff, versus if you do what Dave's saying, which is, just drip tags using the Campaign Builder, that typically is great. I mean, the other drip feed, you could call it drip feed if you want, portion to this, is we have some clients who are doing it where the person has to consume the first step, and then they have to actually take a quiz or push a button or whatever. And we're not evaluating the quizzes or anything at this point, but it forces them through at least a process to where they have to do something to get the next piece of content. And with the action link we covered earlier, and for example in Optimized Press where those work together, some clients are showing a nice Optimized Press membership page, and then when you're done, you go to the bottom and you check some boxes that you did the steps they asked you to do, and then you hit the button, and hitting the button automatically loads the new membership level for the person, which becomes available on the next page. So we're also pushing into some gamification a bit, but as far as the drip feed that's built in, that's been my only argument with that over the years, is you lose control of some of those instances. If you take the extra effort to drip tags on, you have absolute control of the process, which is kind of nice. Not that they're not useful, and we'll look at it, but just my 2 cents. Dave, do you have anything to add?
The one other benefit to using a Campaign Builder is that you can absolutely and reliably synchronize your email with your content drip. And the reason that's important is that in your Campaign Builder sequence, or even in your follow-up sequence, you can say, hey, I'm going to add this tag to unlock this user, this content for this user, and then I'm going to email them and let them know that it's available and give them a link so they can go view it. And you never have to worry that the two are out of sync because they're using the same engine, and that engine being Campaign Builder.
Yeah, and that's when I say, I've had problems over the years, guys, that's kind of what I mean, is you have a sequence sending emails, and then if you have a separate engine dripping content, if those two ever get off, if someone needs to suspend or their card doesn't go through, all those basically customer service issues become bigger. Yeah, it breaks down a little. It can, I should say. But when it's perfect, honestly. But when it breaks down, it's like, so no fun. Let's push on, though. So, Dave, talk more about the caching systems. I know we hit on it, but elaborate if you would.
And the caching system, again, is another incredibly unsexy feature to illustrate. But it's actually the entire reason this plugin was built is I was working with a client, and I've been working with them for, I think we were in our third year working together, third or fourth year. And they were doing a lot of traffic. They were doing webinars with literally 12 to 14,000 people showing up. And what they wanted was for those webinar attendees to auto log into the membership site and be on a one-click page where then we could track who was there. If they took us up on the offer, we could track who clicked the link, all that sort of thing. So we had all the mechanisms in place, but however, we ran into a problem with the membership system and more importantly with Infusionsoft API quotas. And the solution I gave to the membership system vendor was, hey, can we implement some kind of login caching? Can we say, hey, we want to preload the data, their login information and not pull it every time they log in. For all these logins, we don't need to pull in their credit card history and their purchase history because we're simply not using that. And we don't want to even pull in their username check because we've already preloaded that. Because 14,000 people logging in about a 35-minute period, because people start early and they come into about 10-15 minutes after the event started. It was just far too much, and Infusionsoft couldn't handle it. We're talking about like 90,000 API calls in less than an hour. And the answer I got back was, no, most of my clients just simply can't handle that. They're not smart enough to figure it out. Just because it's something you guys need, I can't do it. And that's what actually started this entire plugin. So what we do is we provide some user adjustable settings. You can completely disable login caching if you don't want to use it. It's there if you want to use it. And what it basically says is, if we have the person's record in our local database, and it's within a certain amount of freshness, it's a certain number of seconds or minutes old, or hours old, or days old, you can set that setting. Don't go out to Infusionsoft and re-pull the information. Instead, use what we have on file. With that, there's also some facilities where you can push data from Infusionsoft to Memberium without using API calls to update that data using HTTP post. So, for example, if somebody were to buy something or do something, you can put that post in your action sets for when that purchase is made or when that tag is applied, and it'll push that data down. No API calls get used, and that data is fresh and available in Memberium. And again, this was really designed for this sort of situation where you have a flood of people or flash mob, but it's useful in general. If somebody's logged in and they log out and they log back in 15 minutes later, depending on how fast your data changes on your system, you may be fine with just saying, hey, we're just going to use what we have and log them in instantly rather than having them wait 2 or 3 seconds while 6 or 7 API calls run in the background, updating data that you may not be using. The other part of this is, and something that Micah touched on earlier, was determining what data can be synchronized. Some of the data in the contact record especially can be enormous. The contact notes field, which does not have a whole lot of application for a lot of membership sites, and I would say none of the membership sites that I've worked on can be up to 4 gigabytes in size, and that can cause a significant delay while it's pulling down data that's in all likelihood just garbage data anyway. It's a little bit higher up, Micah. All this stuff's in alphabetical order. It's in the C's, contact notes.
Oh, contact notes.
Yeah. So
I was looking for person notes. That one.
So yeah, so if you highlight this in here and say ignore, it won't sync that field down at all. It'll sync all your other fields that are not highlighted, but it won't sync that one. And so rather than take a grab anything because, oh my goodness, we might possibly need it someday approach, we take more of a, hey, you know what, the site administrator knows what they're doing. They know what fields they're using on their site. Let them just grab the fields that they need. And that way we can keep the API traffic to a minimum. You know, and if you ever want to use additional fields and they're blocked, just unblock them and they'll sync back down. It also helps keep your database light and things running fast.
Very nice. And so just to highlight a couple points for you guys that Dave just went through is that number one, ignoring these limits the amount of data you're pulling drastically. And then what he mentioned earlier in sending the HTTP post from Infusion, that can be really valuable because what it means is, like right here, this person buying, let's say the person is actually logged in as a free member here and they buy this thing through the site. Well, one of the things that I might do is exactly what Dave's talking about, which is, well, you know, we're going to do our other membership actions, but there's a post you can make. You can do one of these that actually forces the contact data into the WordPress database so that even by the next page load, that's happened to them. You know, if they click in the case that they might be upselling, you already have a card on file and so forth, like maybe they've already bought this one and they're going to buy this one. If they buy it in the site, you can literally have it open the next step by running an HTTP post out of Infusion. And that's fantastic because otherwise you'd have to have, you know, a delay in the page while the plugin goes back to Infusion and makes a bunch of API calls to, you know, check what's happened, what's updated, what's different. We just kind of push it down.
Or ask them to do something like log out and log back in. You know, that's the sort of thing,
Right.
again, that we're trying to avoid. The whole point of a one-click upsell is immediate, you know, fulfillment of that desire, and, you know, being able to push them to that next content without jumping through any hoops is what we prefer to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you mean here about other caching systems to integrate or work with? Do you have any in mind?
Sure.
Or
Yeah, so we already work with Xcache and APC, which are PHP caching systems. Those are built into PHP, and those can speed your site up 200 to 500%. And I always encourage people to be running them if they can, depending on your hosting environment. But also, you know, looking at things like W3 total cache and how can we work together with W3 so that you have a reliable experience, you're not delivering the wrong pages to the wrong people, etc. Also, you know, services like Cloudflare, how do you get those to play together? Speedalicious, how can you speed up your site? Because site speed is absolutely critical to conversion, and, you know, at the end of the day, a lot of these membership sites are doing conversion-based tasks at some point. And so you want two things. You want your visitor to stay on your site for a long time because they're enjoying it, but you want to deliver content to them rapidly. So how can we always be pushing that envelope to deliver personalized content as fast as possible?
that's perfect. And Dave, let me ask Rich says a all capital thank you, by the way. Again, he's geeking out on it. But for the non-geek, just to ask this kind of dumb question, at what point, like how many members before you really need to be thinking caching systems? Like, can someone operate under 100 members without too much trouble, or what are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I'd say one paying customer, you should be looking at a caching system.
Okay.
It's not a function. Caching systems for Memberium are not a function of being a crutch to get you over a hoop, you know, or get you over a hump of performance that the system is sagging. Caching systems are about being able to deliver that content as fast as possible. And so when somebody hits next page, they're not sitting there for 2 seconds waiting for the page to load, because people get irritated with that, right or wrong. They do get irritated with it, and that's not the goal of what we want to retain somebody as a happy customer. There's free and inexpensive things you can do. Xcache is free, APC is free. If you're on PHP 5.5, Zen to Opcache is free. Those are things that you can implement on your server. You can work with your ISP to get them on there. You can do that once, and you're going to reap the benefit on every single page load. There's things like Cloudflare, which are off-site caching. And, you know, Cloudflare requires a little bit more customization and some care and some thought about how it's being implemented. But it'll drastically speed up your page loads. Speedalicious, is another one. It's very similar to Cloudflare. It's got some significant differences, and that would be a whole separate video cast on how that's different. But the basis for my answer when you have one paying customer is caching is incredibly important. And again, it was a foundational reason on why this plugin was built. So I strongly believe in caching. The trick is, don't cache the wrong things, and that's where the work comes in. But just because it's work doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It just means we got to do some work. So, no, caching is huge. And things like Xcache and APC and ZendOpCache are safe to do with membership sites. They just make your PHP run faster. They're not caching your content. It's when we get into things like Cloudflare or Varnish or W3 Total Cache that we have to start to be careful, but there's ways to employ those caches and gain the benefits without endangering delivering the right content to the right people.
Yeah, and just to make that clear to everybody, since these pages are being built dynamically and per person, and the page could even change between one visit and the next, I believe the example with something like W3 Total Cache is that you don't cache the content, right? Is it the pages specifically you're not caching, or because that's the basic idea, right? Is cache?
Right. It's specifically the pages you're not caching. So W3 Total Cache, which some people will tell you, oh my God, don't use that. W3 Total Cache is a great tool. It has a lot of different caching features, and you don't need, and I wouldn't recommend that you use all of them. And there's some I'd say stay far away from. But part of what it does supply is not only page caching, which is what everybody tends to think about. It also supplies database caching to speed up loading all the different options you have and optimizing your final output. So when you deliver a page from, let's say you built a page for this client and you're delivering it to them, there's things you can still do to improve that. You can send down headers that say, hey, cache this for 30 seconds. Or you can go through and clean up all the white space and comments and junk in the page output and only deliver the actual code that's needed to render the page, and gzipping that code so that the code is compressed when it's sent down, so that instead of downloading 100K of content, maybe you're only downloading 60, which makes the page load faster. There's tons of techniques for optimizing how fast pages get delivered to the customer and then rendered as quickly as possible. And I always like to be able to play with all of those techniques whenever possible. Just actually caching the page and delivering that page out of the cache is not compatible with a membership system, and it's the most simple, crudest technique. But that doesn't mean we should throw away the rest.
Perfect. Thank you.
And you got to be careful not to pull my string, because I'll keep going on about caching. So why it's important. So.
No,
Sorry,
you're
guys.
okay. You're okay, and I'm sorry, guys, too. We're a few minutes over here, but do you guys have any other questions about Memberium and just anything else in general, anything for us? I can see, let me just kind of comb back through the questions. Anything we missed that you guys asked from before?
And yeah, to Andrew's raised a question, I guess, that somebody put in. This is a significant, like I said, it's not a sexy differentiator, but it is our whole attitude about caching and optimizing performance is a significant differentiator. And I'm biased because, like I said, a lot of my clients are larger. They're dealing with a lot of traffic. But I think the problem is fundamental to everybody. Just some people feel it more than others.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, and it's until you have that problem, you're probably not too worried about it. But once you have, it's like, okay, now that excites me very much so. Okay, so I guess one question that comes in is, how can I help you make it even better? Well, Rich, I know you already just went in and bought one, which we appreciate. And if you'll just give us feedback and ask us about what you want and all that kind of stuff, we just love it. And obviously, tell other people. That's huge for us right now. We're really, as an aside, our marketing strategy is really built around intermediaries, getting people who are happy about it, helping people as much as possible. So right now we're spending time with all new clients. Like, if anyone picks up a copy, we'll spend time with you. But it's really about creating that customer wow. Here's another question that came out. Jason asks, when will the update be out, and will update be automatic?
So updates can be automatic. We have that capability built in. We've held off doing that just because we don't want to potentially create any problems for anybody with an auto update. I've got a new build with some of these new features and whatnot that I'm going to be pushing to Micah and Andrew today. Micah, this raises the other thing which we were talking about yesterday on our team call, which is a beta program.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm not sure, Jason, if you're looking at this just kind of as keeping it active on your site, but yeah, anyone who would like to do a little beta testing for us, we'd be happy to give you a little kind of developer license that will work on, I shouldn't say developer license, that's the wrong term, kind of a testing license, a beta license that you can play with, and if you'll let us know what you want, that's fantastic. But
keeping in mind that the Memberium license, again, is different in that we not only let you install it on your domain, but any subdomain. So you're not limited to www dot and installing it in a subdirectory. If you own example.com, you can install it on dev.example.com, you can install it on membership1.example.com, you can install it on any subdomain on that domain. So certainly, I mean, one of the problems I've run into with clients is that, a new version comes out, there's always bugs in every software, and so you just don't roll out anything willy-nilly. But what we really want to be able to do is to say, hey, here's a copy, you can load it on your development site, you can kick the tires, play with it before you go and roll it out on your main site. And so like I said, we do have unlimited subdomains, and we, internally we're churning out release candidates with, additional features or improvements to features, with bug fixes, and if there's people who are willing to actually test it and kick the tires, we can include you in that circle and let you get a pre-release with this, just with the understanding that, please don't run this on your production site because it may not be the finished implementation. And in occasional cases, some of the implementation might change. If there's a new feature, parameters might change to it, names of shortcodes might change before we finally release it.
And what he means there is he's not going to change stuff that's in the production version, but the beta version we give you is subject to change. And so if,
right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cause confusion. I'm talking about like new features. Like we're rolling out some new features to work with Amazon. And some of those, when you have a shortcode, you have attributes, which are all the little parameters you pass to the shortcode. So for a brand new feature that's not implemented anywhere, some of that might change. We might change the name of the shortcode before we finally release it, or we might change a parameter. But this way, at least you can get in there and kick the tires and see what's going on and see how it can help you with your solutions.
Cool.
And ideally give us some feedback on how it could work better for business cases. And for that, we're not looking for for my particular individual thing, but how can we make a better tool for everybody?
Yeah, that's true. What you guys want, and then, I think other people would like this as well, is also really helpful. Jason, we'll put a beta tag on you, and then we'll do kind of a pre-release, because that's essentially what's happening now anyways, is Dave is giving us internally the beta, and we're testing it for a little while before we make it the actual version that our customers are downloading. But we'll get you on that, and anyone else who wants to, you can send it in. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, we're working on version 2.35 right now, so that'll be the next release.
Nice. Rich is asking about LearnDash and Sensei integration. I don't know if you have anything off the top of your head, but that may be something we just need to look into.
Yeah, I've actually got a client who's looking at implementing LearnDash, and so I've not had a chance to dig in. They're just setting up their development site, but that's something I'm definitely going to be looking at. What do we need to do to play with LearnDash? As far as others, I'm open to looking at them, and I don't have either one of those myself, but definitely interested in seeing what we can do.
Nice. In the interest of time, I'm going to push through the action steps just real quick, guys. Normally, I'd ask you where you're at. Do you need to install WordPress? Do you need to get a plugin? Do you have more questions or whatever? But you guys can always email us at support@memberium.com. If you go to Memberium, and maybe Andrew will put a link in the chat for you, there's a little support thing on the side, and you can. Most of you probably have my email anyways. You can get a hold of me. But I just want to let you guys know at the end here that next month we're going to do it also on May 7th, and it's essentially the first Wednesday of each month from now on at the same time, 9 a.m. Pacific. So if you can just mark your calendar for that first Wednesday of each month, we'll be rolling out the new features, you know, and talking about them similar to what we did today. And then, of course, the replay will come out, and those will be broken down and put in there. But, you know, for the beta group especially, you'll see all the new stuff, and for everyone else. But thanks again for coming. We really appreciate it and appreciate the questions. Dave, do you have anything to add here at the end before we sign off?
No, just really thanks everybody for interest, and thank you in advance for any suggestions or ways that we can help you better. You know, as a developer, my dream is getting my code used by people, so you know, this is very exciting for me.
Nice. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next month, May 7th again, 9 a.m. Pacific. Have a great one.